What is up, world? How are we doing? Welcome on this Friday, the 29th of January. We have a pretty incredible group here from the great state of Florida. Some incredible, oh, look at that. We've got a gator. It just so happens my good friend, Trish Travis, is also from University of Florida, and she kind of got pulled into this. She's kind of become one of the Canvas family at this point, whether she wants to be or not. She wrote some really cool, actually, Trish, I'm putting you on the spot because we're friends, so you can't hate me too much. Will you tell everybody about these cool resources that you kind of put together for districts and others who are kind of trying to get up and running on Canvas before we get started?
Sure. At the beginning of the year, I'm a professor at the University of Florida, and so I use Canvas in my teaching there. And at the beginning of the year, after doing some work with our faculty at the university, I was hearing from friends of mine who are K-12 teachers, like, we really need help getting our Canvas running. Could you share the guide for UF faculty that you made with us? And teaching in the college setting and in a classroom setting are really different. I used to be a high school teacher, so I know a little bit about both. So I just retooled the guide that I had made for university faculty to make it a little bit more friendly for classroom teachers. Shared it with my friends. I put it up on my Teachers Pay Teachers site. But I realized as I was doing that some of the folks who are going to be in a position to sort of be coaching these kids with Canvas are parents who may know nothing about it. And once I started thinking about that, as a parent of a middle schooler, I got really freaked out about what was going to be happening and about how hard it was going to be for parents to really assist their kids and assist teachers in the way that was going to be so important this year, especially in an uncertain environment. Are we in the classroom? Are we at home? Do we have both? Are we suddenly back at home because everyone's sick at school? And I realized that some of the people who would be most seriously affected by that were going to be our ESOL families. So I made a quick, really short guide to Canvas, one page, just sort of explaining it to parents. It's a website. Your kids are going to get their assignments there. You're going to go through the district portal to get to it and stuff like that. But I tapped some resources that I was lucky to have access to through friends on the faculty at the university, and we translated that into the 8 most commonly used languages in Alachua County, which is where the University of Florida is located. And we distributed that through the Alachua County Council of PTAs, and it was one of the few pieces of information to go out directly to ESOL parents as we started school back in August. So that got a little news attention because it was a sort of feel-good story about parents coming together to help other parents in a crazy time, the university helping the community, something that we need to do a little bit more of, I think. Mark saw that story in the newspaper, and he invited me to be on. I was in this live stream last fall talking about a little bit about that project. And since then, we just have been in touch about stuff. And I had heard from my daughter's science teacher at Westwood Middle School, which is where all these folks teach, about how challenging the science fair was going to be this year. And I thought, this is something that I can do as a volunteer to help teachers out. I can't be a science fair judge. I'm a history professor. But I know how to set up a Canvas assignment, so I can just set up the assignments for the science fair. And that will take a big burden off of teachers. And I know that I, as a parent, will understand what's going on. So it's really all about me and about my selfish desire as a parent to be able to make the school year work for me. So I'm sorry if that's not the happy picture you wanted me to paint, Mark, but that's where I'm keeping it real today.
You're hilarious. That's exactly what I wanted. So a little context.
Sorry, I disagree a little bit. I think it was very giving. And I also think that her not being a science teacher or a science professor is actually an asset, because when she looks at the assignments and she reads them, and she doesn't understand, that's where most of our parents are. So I think that it was wonderful. We really appreciate all of her time. She put in a lot of time and effort into it. So it wasn't selfish because we all benefited from it. And ultimately, it's our students who benefit. And so that's who we're trying to reach. But I think that not being a scientist in this case was perfect because she doesn't automatically know all the terms that we use. And she's brought that to light for our students.
And Ms. Charbonnet, can you talk for me a little bit? My understanding is that the Science and Engineering Fair is a requirement, correct, in the state of Florida? Can you talk about that?
Yes, it is not a requirement in the state of Florida per se. All students are required to do some kind of investigative, or that's part of our standards, is that students do research and so on. At our particular school, our principal feels strongly that every student deserves that opportunity. And it is an opportunity that students deserve to try to do some research. And, sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. It doesn't have to be way over the heads of the students. It can be something very simple as long as they go through the process. I am on the state board for the Florida Foundation of Future Scientists that is also responsible for the science fair in the state. And I've worked with the state for many years on this. But it's something we encourage, but not all schools require it and not all teachers require it. I think we're very fortunate to have a principal who is not a science background person, but realizes the importance of knowing how to do research.
That's fantastic. So walk me through whether Mr. Bolin, Mr. Heaney, Trish, Ms. Charbonnet, whomever wants to. I know that we used Canvas during what has been a pretty crazy past year, if you will. How did you set this up in Canvas so that the students could continue to learn and flourish?
So since I set the module up, let me explain a little bit what my process was. So my daughter's a 7th grader. She had Mrs. Charbonnet in 6th grade last year. And I was very excited as a person who teaches mostly with paper and books and pencils. I was excited that there was a paper packet that included all of the assignments. So this is a semester-long project investigation that the students are on. I really admire the way that it's framed as this is how professional scientists work. And it's about sharing information within a community of scientists, and they have rules for the way they communicate. That's a great framing, I think, for young kids to hear, because the work that they're doing may seem random, or they may not get a lot of scientific knowledge in return in exchange on their investment, but they learn a communications process that is professional, that is translatable to other contexts, and that gives them a rationale for why they're doing what they're doing, which for middle school students is really important. So I really liked the way last year, not only was each assignment in the process broken out really clearly, but it was all framed in this sort of, this is what scientists do, this is part of their project, this is how they communicate among each other, and you record this data at this point so you can share it at that point later. So I had the paper packet last year, and it was posted as a PDF in the Canvas site for my daughter this year. And I just thought, this is a perfect thing to translate from the paper interface that is in the traditional classroom to a Canvas interface. Each has a different part. Every part has to be completed before you go on to the next part, and we can really use the online display of information to highlight the communicative nature of each of these assignments. Each of these assignments has a investigative or research or action component, but we can use the Canvas interface and the modular structure to really show how each of these is a piece of the bigger communication that you're doing. So I, with Mrs. Charbonnet's and Mr. Erickson's permission. I volunteered to set up the assignments. I took each of the pieces in the packet and I made a separate Canvas assignment for them. And in each one, I foregrounded the sort of why are we doing what we're doing. Mr. Boland, if you could maybe just like click on one of the assignments so we could see the way it's sort of set up with the different sets of instructions. So kids want to know what's the point, like why are we doing this? This seems kind of random. So each of the assignments is set up and designed in the same way in the assignment pane, with a brief statement of what is the point of this part of the experiment. How do I complete the assignment? I'll say a little bit about why that was important in just a second. And then a what's next. So you really emphasize the idea that like this is all part of a process that you're going through, and you're going to connect what you just did to the next thing as you move into the next step in the next week. It was really important in these assignments to indicate to the kids how to turn the work in, because we started this at the very beginning of the semester when not just the students, but also many of the teachers were unsure how to use the Canvas interface to turn in assignments, set due dates, set point values, use the gradebook and stuff like that. So each of the assignments has very detailed instructions on what the document you are creating needs to look like, where you should save it so that you can use it easily later, and how to submit it through the interface, directing them really clearly. Look in the upper right-hand corner for the blue submit button so that we could train the kids to use the screen to know where to look so that they could hand their assignments in on time and correctly. And my goal for reiterating this in each of those assignments, oh dear, the assignment's not available yet. My goal for doing that over and over again in the science project wasn't just to clarify how to get the assignments in for science class, but to teach students how to use the Canvas interface in a way that they would be able to take to their other classes as well. Since they were being asked to do work in a way that was totally new, not only to them, but to the teachers. And many kids, including my daughter, were learning from home, so they didn't have that clue of seeing how other kids were turning things in to know how to do it. So it seemed like there was a real possibility here to teach students how to interact efficiently with Canvas, as well as to teach them really important skills about science activities and science communication. So that was the sort of logic that we used there.
This is super cool. So Mr. Boland, Charbonnet, Heaney, give any thoughts that you've had as far as, I mean, that's a big change from going from that paper packet to moving it over to more of a digital experience. How have the kids reacted to it? One of our good friends, Jim Wolf here, who is a Canvas power user, wonderful way to get assignment information to the students, show them the interface. Kudos to all of you. Talk us through what students have felt about this experience.
It's been an interesting learning process for the students because, like Dr. Travis said, it's new to us as teachers, but it's also new to them. And especially with the younger students, with sixth graders, we had to start out with, and that's what I love about how to complete the assignment part. But we had to start out with how to log in, what's an email, what's a Google Doc, just really basic steps. And this breaks it down to steps that the students could follow. So students kind of caught on, but I think most of the comments that I received were from parents being very appreciative that they can read the directions too. It's there and they can help the students. Because sometimes even when we're in the regular world, when we tell students how to do something in class, parents aren't always there. And so they don't know the steps they don't know what is expected of the students exactly. And sometimes things get lost a little bit in the translation from the time they're at school to the time they get home. So this is very clear. They can see it. And I think that that was one of the best things, was that not only students could see it step by step, but parents could also see it and they could support us all together.
Yeah, I found just that the big picture with it, especially being in the module section, seeing like step by step, you know exactly how many steps there are to get through this. You know what's coming up next. That was super helpful. It was also super helpful as a teacher just to be able to push it out and be ready to go while learning to make a lot of content for Canvas. There was a little twist that I added to this whole like little interface going on. I'm a little partial to the Google Docs and Google Assignments, so I made a digital logbook. So especially for students who do decide to enter the science fair, having a logbook is part of their presentation and showing being prepared. So I tried to take what would traditionally be used as like a composition book as they track their project. I tried to create a digital version. And this was something that even going into next year, trying to blend a little bit of this digital logbook with the way the assignments get turned in Canvas and using them together. So I made a Google slide here with a little table of contents on the side. I pre-made like all the pages that would eventually get each assignment along the way. So students could put in, what they did on what day during each month. They'd have a place to put their title and purpose. But what I thought was pretty fun, pretty cool is putting the links on the side to make it easy to jump to like their references and bibliography. So you can jump straight to that page. So something that I'm going to try to implement, bringing these two little systems together is so instead of uploading a new Google Doc every time, they're going to as they add to their one giant logbook, they're going to resubmit their logbook with each assignment along the way. And so what's helpful for that is sometimes if I'm like looking at a student's materials and procedures, I need to know what their topic is and what their hypothesis is, what their independent and dependent variables are. And that's really hard to like leave a Canvas assignment, go to another one, what they've got. So I started implementing this as an easy way, like, oh, let me go back and look what their title and purpose is. And okay, things match up. And it makes it easy for me as the instructor to double check stuff, or even for the kid to be like, wait, I forgot. Because they'll be, Mr. Bowen, I forgot what my hypothesis is. So what am I supposed to do? And then we got to go back and look and find it. So I found this Google Doc to be a great complement to this system.
It's fantastic. Mr. Bowen, you're getting a shout out from one of the Canvas greats. There happens to be a really great podcast out there called the Canvas Casters. Go check it out. They're actually fairly nice guys too. But Marcus here is saying nicely done. One location is so helpful. Mr. Heaney, what about you? Any thoughts that you've heard from parents or students about this whole digital Canvas-driven experience?
No. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, so they like that the assignments are numbered and in order. One of the things that every teacher, I assume, is added to that to Dr. Travis's numbered list in Canvas is the due dates, which also appear in that list at the bottom of every assignment. Once every teacher has their own due dates entered, and it's just really, really great. I did use some tools that Bolin used that were in addition to Dr. Travis's, where he had embedded some things from Google tools into the assignment, and hopefully I'm describing that technically correct in Canvas, so that they didn't have to start a Google document on their own and then upload it. But still, the instructions were incredibly helpful because while we're a Google campus, we use all those free tools, and have in the past, students are still not familiar with how to use those, and you have to teach them how to do that. So when they get to an embedded tool that takes them to a Google Doc or a Google slide, they still need to know how to interact with Canvas through that. And so this really, really did help with that.
That's awesome.
I love the idea of having the online logbook so that everything is all together in one place. It sounds like it makes it much easier for the whole business of like saving multiple Google documents and then gluing them all together into one thing for the project packet at the end. I'll just say personally, as a parent, that was when I started crying last year. Just all those pieces of paper. So I love the idea of having an ongoing document that they can work in, and it must make it so much easier for grading for just the reasons that you just described, because you also need to be able to see all of the different parts if you want to give meaningful commentary. It's just amazing to me the way in which paper made some things really easy. If the kids have a composition book and they're doing all that work in the composition book, as long as they don't lose the composition book, everything's great. The paper, the book is an amazing technology. And I wonder, the one question I had about that, Mr. Bolin, is that I'm thinking about the different projects that I saw in the science fair last year, many of which were, making things explode outside or growing plants and stuff like that. I know that for my daughter's projects, we tried to have a special notebook where she kept all her measurements and data in longhand, because you can take a piece of paper out to the experiment site or move it around and stuff like that. Are you seeing kids keep their notes in longhand and then transpose them into the Google Logbook, or are people actually using a tablet to keep their data? I mean, we're talking about kids here, so the stakes are kind of low, but I'm just wondering about whether they're using paper at all.
I know some students definitely use paper for most of their stuff, and they're just like, Mr. Bolin, can I do paper? Like I use Google assignments for almost everything this year for beyond the science fair and stuff. And some students are just more comfortable writing by hand. So I tell them, hey, make sure you're neat and legible, clearly label stuff, and you can just take a picture and upload it. So I know some students definitely took data by hand. I was helping a couple kids do their project, like take measurements, and they just had out their phone, and their dad helped them make a spreadsheet, and that's how they kept their data. It wasn't directly tied to their logbook, but they eventually it got to their logbook. But they, their dad knew how to use Google Docs and spreadsheets and stuff, and so they actually just typed in their measurements as they did their activity outside. So I say it depends on the kid. I mean, this year's. I'm excited to see how we can continue to use Canvas and these Google things to streamline some stuff for science projects as we go in the future, whether students do the fair or just a classroom project, and like learning some better ways to get things going. But I forget where I was going there. But it depends on the kid, I think.
Yeah. I think it depends on the students and the resources that some students have too. We have some students who have very limited resources, so they don't have a lot of technology other than what we provide them. And then other students are fortunate; they have connections to parents who are like you, who are at the university or who are very familiar with Canvas, and so they do have access to other technology. But it's there, we have the whole spectrum, I would say. I have a question for you, Mark.
I'm ready.
Okay. Is there a way to kind of meld these things? Like I love the way that this is set up, the assignment 1 and 2. And is there a way that we could link this together so that when we open, let's say, assignment 5, it automatically shows us 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that I can know when they give me the references, well, does this have anything to do with your subject or not? So I can see the previous assignments.
Interesting. So what we should do is take this offline and do a little working session, which we would be happy to do. If you're friends with Dr. Travis, then you all of a sudden get special treatment because so there is a really
Hey, when am I going to get some special treatment?
Hey, don't give the secrets away, Travis. So there is a really cool integration that we have with Google that we ought to look, Mr. Bolin, because there's some cool stuff that could be done there to make this process even better from what you're doing in there. But I'd love to sit down Ms. Charbonnet, Mr. Bolin, Mr. Heaney, and anybody else to talk about what we could do to make this all the more easy for you guys. So let's set some time to do it.
Sounds great. And I will be happy to share this at the state level too. And we have some meetings coming up with the science fair coordinators throughout the state. So maybe for next year when things are more settled and we know that, because I think there's not going to be a total turn back, right? Where I don't think we will ever go back to totally doing this by hand. I think that now that we have this technology, some students are going to have this and are going to, this is going to be easier for them. This is going to be the day of the future. And I like to teach students to what they're going to be using. So the university uses Canvas. I think that as middle school teachers, we need to start training them to get there, to be able to use Canvas easily when they get to the university level. And that's not going to be their first exposure to a program like Canvas or whatever they use at their college.
Yeah.
I would reiterate that too, Ms. Charbonnet. I mean, even the past 2 years, I had used Google Classroom for all of my science project and science fair assignments. So I felt a little ahead of the game and ready to use Canvas to keep up with that stuff. Mark, I think maybe I'm on the right track with this, but I've been using the new Google assignment LTI for the past few weeks.
You are right on, actually. Good job.
So, which is great because you could push out Google Docs and they automatically makes a copy for the student. So what I'm foreseeing doing in the future, like under this assignment 1, choose a topic, it would have, I would use the Google assignment LTI and would automatically push out this logbook to them, the template and everything. And I would add more. Now that I've done this once, I know kind of what instructions I want to put on what page and what things need to be there. And then from there, so they get this, they have one document, again, like we said, something that you can continually add to. And so Ms. Charbonnet, like you're saying, to be able to refer back, each new assignment, all the students do when they go open the new assignment, they would just attach a Google file or a Google Doc. And so they would reattach, like each time they go to the next assignment, they would have to do this process. I couldn't do that for them, I don't think, but they would attach the old, this document here, and it'd be the same file every time with all the new updated information as you go.
Yeah, and you could have them, every time they resubmit, they could rename it with the assignment number in the new document name so that you know that you're looking at the most recent updated one with the current new thing that has been added to it. That sounds like a great way to proceed. I'm getting so many ideas from my own teaching from this. Whenever I have any kind of scaffolded assignment, the proposal, the rough draft, the bibliography, the working draft, I would love to be able to see all of those in one place every time I get a new piece of the assignment. This is a terrific way of thinking about how to make that possible without having to open a bunch of different files that you've saved, or maybe you forgot to download them that time and so they're not on your drive. So this is terrific and really helpful for me.
Well, and I don't think the student would have to rename their document every time either. The Google assignment LTI gives, like when they hit the submit button, it gives the most up-to-date option or the most up-to-date file that they've had. And so what I'm thinking, at least for this particular assignment, I would, if I'm grading their hypothesis, the Google LTI would open this page. I would click hypothesis, click that link real quick, and then I go right there. They don't even have to rename it or anything. And if I see something's there, I grade it. And if I see it's actually blank and there's nothing, then, they get the feedback that they need then.
Cool. That sounds great. I don't know this Google assignment interface. So Mr. Bolin, I'm going to have to hire you as a consultant this summer to help me rethink my assignments. Instead of just having kids turn in Word documents, I'm going to have to get up to date.
Some examples, but I can't show student information at this point. So since it's live to the world.
Let's share that one with Dr. Travis later, as we're right up there on time. And this has been so awesome. I love the brainstorming. I love the ideas. I love that you took a big science fair and figured out how to digitize it. Any closing thoughts Mrs. Charbonnet, as we're going to go just down the list from where I'm seeing you. Mrs. Charbonnet, how do we use these technologies and skills that we've gained during the pandemic to move forward even more? I'm speaking, there's a big district out there in Florida called Broward, I'm sure you're aware of, that I'm speaking to some of their teachers later, I guess, later in February. And that's really the focus is where do we go next? We don't want to stop at what we just learned and go all the way back to what we did before. So what do you think? What should we try?
I think looking ahead, I think technology, of course, is the future, and we need to take it where we are and try to continue using this technology. So we don't have to anymore. Or hopefully next year we won't have to do Canvas, or we don't have to do live teaching online, but we will take the technology to help students and to use it and move forward. At the same time, we need to be flexible because not all of our students have the use of the technology. So I like the choice. I like for our population anyway, we don't have a one-to-one laptop ratio or anything like that at our school. So for our school, I think it's important to offer both choices, but definitely keep this. Don't go back to just paper because we're not preparing them for the future. We're looking at what we used to do. It's kind of like learning how to use a slide ruler. We don't really want to do that anymore. We want to move forward. But for those kids who don't have a calculator, maybe we need to keep this for a little bit longer until everybody has.
Love it. Mr. Bolin, what about you? I know you are taking the science fair over. Where do we go from here?
I agree with Ms. Charbonnet again. Like technology is becoming more and more a part of daily life. So many kids and teenagers are so used to technology, but they don't necessarily know how to use it academically or professionally. I was talking to a parent just the other day about how his son is getting ready because he made it to the next stage and he's editing his paper or his slides and all that stuff. And he said his son's like it's a lot of work and I'm ready to be done, but it's cool and it's fun. But the dad was just saying how great of an experience this is to learn how to make a presentation, to prepare it, to present it. More and more, like if you want to be ready to be successful in the next stage, whether it's academia or you get into management somewhere, like you need to know how to use technology in a way that you can communicate effectively to get your ideas across, to be able to get the right point across without missing things, to have a little bit of that knowing how to edit things well so that it makes sense, to be clean and neat and nice. Like students need those opportunities, and so I think this is important. And I know in my classroom I will continue to implement the digital version as much as possible to help prepare them. More and more universities are using online classes. Canvas and other programs are being used. Students need to be familiar and comfortable with it.
Awesome. Mr. Heaney, what about you? Where do we go from here?
Well, we're going to be using Canvas for forever now. Last time I used it when I was a grad student at UF, and that was ages ago. And it's slightly different, but the same. And I guess things change over time. But it's here. It's easier than paper, and I guess you have to convince students of that, and then they the light bulb goes off, and then they realize that it's just easier. They've been doing it the hard way on paper. So once they get there, and so I guess it's just a process that they're going through to figure this out.
Love it. Dr. Travis, I want you to wrap us up because you're the one that got us into this mess. It was really me, but I'm blaming on her.
So here's my question to y'all as classroom teachers, and to you, Mark, as the representative of Canvas. What does the district need to do to make this movement forward easier? because this conversation has been really interesting, exciting. I hear a lot of positive ideas about cool stuff we can do in the future. Different ways that we can rethink our teaching to improve it and stuff. And what I, as a parent, want is for teachers to have that positive feeling and for them to be excited about using technology to improve their classrooms. That is not really the way the district pitched Canvas at the beginning of this school year. It was an unusual year. Let's hope we're putting it behind us. But what does the district need to do, and how can parents help them to do what you all need for this to become an exciting, creative, invigorating teaching opportunity for you, instead of just like, oh my God, we got to do this because they said we have to, and like I just really want things to go back to the way they were. Like, what do we need to do to make that happen, to make that space for you all?
There's two things that I think of. Time for us to learn to create stuff in Canvas, to find the right materials, find the right assignments, time to build stuff. And the second is access, making sure that every child truly does have internet access and technology access. Because if they can't do it at home, or if all they have is a smartphone, then it's too hard.
Interesting point. I do think we need to set up a little brainstorm with this whole group. You'll see this, her name's the Canvas Queen. It's actually not her real name. Miss Burleson, who's a great educator out in the state of Nevada, is also a science teacher, is doing some crazy stuff in Canvas right now to be able to bring a lot of these cool things to life. We got to set up a brainstorm, but I totally agree, Mr. Bolin, with that idea of accessibility. How do we make sure that the kids are all set up for success? And then the time. I know that for so many this year, it was kind of thrust upon you because of what happened in the pandemic. Like, people need help and they need time to be able to really nail this for their students. So excellent thoughts. Any other thoughts from anyone as we close out?
I think you've hit the two main points. I think we had 2 weeks to learn Canvas and get on, and day one of students. And I think once we do that, one important element is at the beginning of the year, I think we need to have an in-service for students, teach them what we expect and how to do things. Because I think a lot of times we learn things and then we expect the students to know it. And some of them know more than we do, admittedly. But also I think if we break it down into little steps, every student can learn the process. And we have to remember that we have students of so many levels. We have some very gifted students and we have some struggling students. So I think a step-by-step process of, at the very beginning of the year, having students learn how to do Canvas, that would be great. I know that we,
just to piggyback on that with something that I picked up on at the Canvas Con last fall. I know that I heard a presentation there by someone who was the IT coordinator. This was at a small independent school, so not a public school, but she talked about the importance of training the faculty, training the students, and training parents. And the fact that because parents are, we hope at least, going to be coaching their kids to get this stuff done, acquainting them with the sort of basic functionality of Canvas and the expectation that kids will be using it, that's a really key piece of the puzzle. I'd love to be able to work with the PTA to figure out how we could make that happen. Maybe bring the parents to that in-service as well, or at least prepare some materials for them so that they can get a sense of what the expectations will be.
So brilliant. So brilliant. Thank you to these incredible teachers from out in, I think I'm going to say it right this time, Dr. Travis, Alachua County.
You got it. Good job, Mark.
You guys don't know, but I did happen to butcher that when Dr. Travis and I met the first time. Totally butchered. But we are so grateful for incredible educators. Thankful to Dr. Travis at University of Florida for being our friend and kind of getting pulled into these different directions with me now. She's stuck. She can't get out of it if she tries. Big thanks to these great educators. Hang in there. Have a lovely, lovely weekend, everyone, and we will see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.